Disclaimer, I didn't pick that music. Okay, so I guess final last minute curveball. This presentation, yeah, it was meant to be making technology more natural, but we changed it to home. So if you still want to see making technology more natural, it's available on YouTube. Just type my name and probably will show up. Okay, so let's get started.
Mobile.
Yes. All right. Yes. So I always like to start the presentation with something that feels a bit personal. So that's me. A bunch of inappropriate pictures of me and my son in front of a computer, basically, when he comes to visit when I'm working my stuff. So my name is Claudio Guglieri. Thanks for the introduction. I'm a graphic designer and a creative director. That means I design stuff, and when I have the opportunity, I help others design other stuff. I think that's a really important nuance. This is some of the work that I've done in the past 3-4 years. But for the past couple of years, I work at Microsoft. And what I was doing at Microsoft was basically leading the architecture for Microsoft Fluent Design, which is a design system that is meant to stretch over the whole ecosystem of devices, platforms, and services that Microsoft has out there. You guys can check some of this online as well. There are a few talks on YouTube. But today, I really don't want to talk about work that you guys can find online. If you want to know more about it, just mention the handle, so you can always go there. Today I want to talk about basically our daily relationship with physical interfaces, and I want to get started by playing this audio clip, and I'm going to ask you a few things afterwards.
Heavy machine gun.
All right, so how many of you recognize most of the sounds that I just played? We're old, right? That we need to assume this. These sounds are like really, really old. That's almost like a timeline of my relationship with technology, right? So I think the thing that sparked this whole talk was this idea, this self-awareness that I've been using certain software and apps and products for quite a long time at this point. And even today, like this is kind of like where I live in terms of like the apps that I use. And I use this for many, many hours a day. And over the years, like it's been almost like 20 years, just living in front of my computer doing a lot of stuff, right? So it's interesting that I still remember when things weren't just like this. Right? I still remember when we got our first computer at home in the 90s, or when I got my first cell phone. Right? But things have changed quite a lot in the last 20 years. So according to the Nielsen Total Audience Report, and this is for the fourth quarter of 2016, the average screen time that basically spent per adult in the US, meaning over 18 years old, is on average around 10 hours a day. So again, I spend a lot of time, we all spend a lot of time in front of these devices. It's interesting that I work using a computer, I relax playing video games sometimes. I talk to my friends, especially in Europe, via WhatsApp. Every weekend I talk to my family over Skype, because that's like old people up at this point. It's fun. I read the news online. When I want to learn about the world, I go online, right? And when I want to learn new skills, there's always a 12-year-old kid on YouTube that can teach you everything. So all this, it wasn't like that before. And now all these different dimensions, like I create, I communicate, I grow as a person, I grow professionally, all that kind of like relies on the screen. So, at this point, you guys are like, cool pitch. So what's going on? So far I've been talking to you just, mainly as a consumer, but the fact that you're here, it means you're not just a consumer, right? You have skin on the game. You've been working, and this is my assumption, you have, some sort of like work actually invested on this field, right? So, I like to think about the metaphor of home as, again, the place where you're meant to feel, you spend most of your time, where you're supposed to be yourself, you're supposed to feel safe, you're supposed to feel at ease, right? And from that perspective, I mean, we are some kind of home builders. If you consider the amount of time that people are spending on these devices, we're trying to build environments where they can feel that way, right? They can fully engage with our products. And we do that by basically designing digital spaces, right? We make certain decisions that we think are the right decisions that really define how they can like interact with this product. I mean, we do that through the hierarchy of an application. To give you a really simplistic example, right? To like where do you place a call to action, or how do you define the entry points for specific features? We're actually building that digital space. And just to kind of hammer a little bit more on this, I guess the impact of our work. Just think about an app like Instagram or like Outlook. Every single small change that these designers do on Instagram have like millions of people raging online. Oh, you changed this! I cannot find this button. What's happening? Even if it only takes a couple of seconds per person to digest the new changes that you put in the app, that translates into millions of seconds that you're making them actually spend in front of the app, not really doing what they went there to do in the first place. So with that in mind, I want to talk to you about three different things. I want to share some of the conclusions that I have working on products, to have like a good takeaway for those of you working on this field. So I'm going to talk about three different dimensions. One is repetition, evolution, and finally ownership. So let's get started right away. Repetition is all about the value of instant familiarity and the life of repetitions. And I have a video that I want to show you first. So what I even mentioned before is that, by using these app moments, not only I use my phone for like hour and 33 minutes a day, I also like wake up my phone at least 46 times a day. 46 times a day. I mean, just how many times a day I'm looking at this motion animation of like, the home screen coming into life, or how many times I check my email, or how many times I'm checking all those apps, really define kind of like an important kind of like dimension that we should consider when actually designing this product. So in his book, Fluent Design for the Web, Randy J. Hand, which used to be a creator director at Etsy when he wrote this essay, he talks about the attributes of the product, right? And of all of those, frequency of use, directional data, all those, one of the most important ones is the frequency of use. Really, the frequency of use defines that relationship that we have with the product, and it should influence all the design decisions that we make. It's almost like it's through repetition when we actually get to understand what is the most valuable information in that product and how is it being used. And what I found really interesting is that, in my surroundings, the people that I work with, for the most part, people that I work with, especially in the design environment, they all have this career path coming from marketing. Right? I mean, I, for instance, have more experience designing marketing and campaigns than I have designing products. And that comes with certain biases and certain, almost like we all have our bag of tricks. That is really interesting when you bring these people and actually have them working on a product. So if really products use repetition to make you feel at home, this whole marketing dimension is slightly different, right? It normally is, put out there in the digital environment as a website, and it doesn't have the luxury of repetition. It only has this one time, this one shot to make an impact on you, right? Therefore, I like to think about it more as a hotel, right? Is that there's this entity that fulfills a temporary goal. You go there, you do your thing, you rest, whatever, and once you're out, you're out. There's no need for you to come back to that place. And by no means I'm trying to like undervalue or not appreciate the work that goes into marketing experiences, right? Like this is I mean, there's a few examples from really, really talented studios out there. They're as complex as you want to make them, right? You could bring like CGI artists from Hollywood, you could bring like script writers from whatever to write a short film for your website. It's as complicated as you want to make it. Yet it doesn't necessarily deny what I just said. You fulfill one goal, and once you've done it, you're out. There's no need to come back. So with that in mind, really products and just like homes, right, should be delightful by repetition. Should be actually evaluated over being used repeatedly. So bear with me for a second. I want to tell you a little bit of a story. So imagine, you've been working all day. You flew in from a different city. You spend all day with a client. You're really tired. You're really standing, talking in front of 100 people all day. And you finally get to your hotel. You check in. You go upstairs. You open the door. And when you open the door, you start seeing things that, of course, look familiar. You see the bed. You see the bathroom. You see everything that you would expect in that hotel. You look at the pillow, and suddenly you see this amazing piece of chocolate. That's exactly what you needed. That's exactly what you felt like you really wanted to get a sugar cake, right? So you get there, you get closer, there's a note close to it, and it says, "Welcome to, whatever hotel. We appreciate your business. Thanks for coming in." And like, oh my God, that was a great first-time user experience. That felt fantastic. I liked it so much. Then I'm going to do the same thing every time I go home. I'm going to buy a bunch of chocolate. I'm going to put it on my bed and just go in my room and just eat a piece of chocolate. So what would happen if we do that? What would happen if we try to replicate this one-time experience, in our product, right? It will be good. It will be good. I mean, not on the long term. And thinking about again. Repetition is one of the factors that we need to consider, and marketing is kind of like the background that many of us have when working on products. Truly, you could bring this to the use of motion, right? The use of motion in marketing experiences is basically used to create immersive, delightful moments that you're browsing, you're scrolling, you're like, oh my God, this is great. Look at all this stuff changing sizes, all these parallax effects, that felt amazing. But when you bring that to a product, and you bring it the wrong way, what the hell is going on? You're just like trying to write an email and all these things is like happening in front of you. You do that 100 times a day, you don't want to see that 100 times. So really with that in mind, like what's the best way to actually apply this knowledge from the marketing world to a digital product? So I want to bring a couple of considerations. The content is a bit hard, but the first one comes from Balhead. She's a design advocate at Adobe. Great writer, designer, and speaker. You should definitely check her website. She wrote this article in a list of articles, UI animation and UX, and not so secret friendship. She comes to say that it's important that we reserve motion for the most important parts of the interaction, ones that are most critical to the main message. And I will take this even further. It's not only the most important ones, but the moments you want your users to be rewarded for. What do you want your users to do in your app? That's where you need to put the motion. That's where you need to put the extra care on those interactions. And you can see that on apps like Twitter, Facebook. I mean, only on those moments is when you get that delightfulness. They're not trying to reinvent a drop-down. They're not trying to reinvent a simple dialogue. They always, they only reward you when you do things like react to a comment or say happy birthday to somebody. That's where the value is. And a different consideration comes from Sophie Paxton. She's a UX designer based in Australia. She wrote this article that I really, really like called Your UI is in a Disney movie. It was a response to a different viral piece of content that came out talking about the UI Disney animation principles. So the Disney animation principles apply to the user interaction. And she kind of like responded to this, saying animations is like cursing. The more you use it, it loses all its impact, right? She says that, and this is totally valid and definitely applying in my work, when you consider using a motion animation in your app, you need to consider if it serves a functional purpose or an aesthetic purpose. And as much as possible, you need to make sure it's always functional. Otherwise, it will be counterproductive to the purpose of the app. And one quick example around that is, it's a kind of old one, but still pretty relevant. This is, back in the days, Facebook on iOS used to have this wall, kind of like moment where you have to wait for the content to load, right? So the team was kind of like A/B testing ways to do this and what will work better. And they did this one motion piece where they created a custom animation, and they A/B tested with this sort of piece where they use the default Apple spinner. What they learned was that when they used their own custom animation, people were blaming Facebook for being slow. They were blaming Facebook for like, oh, what the hell is going on with that? But when they were using the Apple one, they would blame Apple, right? They would say, oh, my device is too slow, or, you know, the internet is not working, or something like that. So even though they did all the extra work to define their own motion, kind of like moment there, they were really driving attention to one thing that wasn't relevant, one thing that wasn't key to basically that experience. So a few takeaways here. It's important that we find your hero, you find your hero moment, you find the one thing you want your users to do, and you build this core habit, this core loop around it, and reward it with things like motion. It's important that you keep it subtle if it is meant to be repeated over and over. You don't want to overwhelm the user and basically get them tired with the same thing if it doesn't have a functional purpose. And as much as possible, use motion in this case to improve usability. That could be anticipate content structure, drive the user attention, surface certain type of content. It always, the more function purpose that you add to that specific delightful trick, you know, the more rewards that the user will feel. All right, so that was repetition. I want to talk about evolution now. This is all about how can we foster a good relationship with our customers over time. I have a short video for you guys.
This is a day I've been looking forward to for 2.5 years.
Computer enthusiasts lined up to be first in the world to have Windows 95.
That's been really exciting for me today.
It has been my dream to be first in line for any Apple Store event.
It's really interesting to think about, you know, the amount of years that we've been like on this technological roller coaster, right? Like Windows 95, that was Australia, right? The first in the time zone that was getting this product, how excited they were back then. So, you know, traditionally, the definition of a product is being closer to this thing that, you know, you buy, you spend all this money, and then you own it, right? And you sometimes, I mean, back in the days, you will get this box, which, you know, as a designer, I really like this concept, but it didn't really work. And luckily, I mean, that has been changing, right? Now the definition of a product is closer to the idea of a service. I mean, think about a subscription model that you pay for as long as you need. And as long as it satisfies your needs, right? And you know, you have the right to use. And what this does is a couple of things. I mean, it creates a healthier, basically, business model, right? It supports our developers, but also from a designer perspective, we don't have that pressure anymore. We don't have the inbox pressure of this is going to go on a box, and we're not going to be able to touch it ever again. Now we can actually learn from our users. We can actually anticipate their needs. We can actually have a product, you know, plan that spans over X amount of time. Yet it has more touch points with our customers. And you know, let me tell you something: it's hard. I mean, users, man. Yeah, it's you know, it's good because we can learn from them, right? But you know, you never stop learning. It's incredible how. You know, you definitely need to, of course, look at how they're using the product. You know, VMA said how they use or misuse the product from your perspective. They're never misusing it, right? And try to learn as much as you can. We have that opportunity now. This is a short clip, one of these user research sessions at Microsoft, when we're like presenting some new features to you know, people that have never seen this product before, and it's mind blowing. You know, after so long in this industry, how what you think is crystal clear, it really isn't. So really interesting. So, you know, what is the key to improving our product over time and make everybody happy? I'll cut it short. There's no way you can make everybody happy. There's no way in hell. You always have this person that is happy with your work, with the product. You have the one that is always unhappy yet keeps using it and tweeting about it. And you have the one that loves you today and hates you the most tomorrow. And that's okay, right? So with that in mind, I want to talk about a couple of considerations, a couple of like dimensions that we should consider when evolving our product. The first one comes from John P. Gerville. He's a professor of business administration at the Harvard Business School. And he wrote this really interesting essay called Eager Sellers and Stony Buyers, Understanding the Psychology of New Product Adoption. He says that it's not enough for a new product to simply be better. unless the gains far outweigh the losses, consumers will never adopt it. So think about this, right? Every time there's a new product and you own the previous version, you're considering what to get. Everything that is an improvement, it feels great. You're like, oh yeah, this is going to be better. But if there's one thing that is not there anymore, let's say the headphone jack, suddenly it becomes the biggest thing, right? You're never going to get that phone. It's not going to happen. You change into Android, of course. So it's an interesting thing to consider when you actually think about, supporting features and kind of like following your roadmap in a product. The second one comes from Christina Workin, and I apologize for the lack of contrast, but she's a great speaker, teacher. She writes a bunch of like really good content on Elegant Hack. You should definitely check her out. She kind of like builds on this idea from John Dorville. She says, users hate change that doesn't make their life better, but makes them have to relearn everything they need. So a couple of dimensions, right? The first one is all about what I just mentioned from John Dorville, how newer is this product, and what are the shortcomings of it in terms of the previous version. And this one is slightly different. It's about learning. Nobody likes to learn anything. I mean, we lie to ourselves, but learning is hard. Learning is hard for our brain. And that's something that users consider actually when thinking about a new product. So Christina and John, they basically define or argue that they can anticipate the success of a product by placing it in this matrix, right? On the vertical axis, we have the degree of behavior change required, meaning how much you have to relearn this thing. And then on the horizontal axis, we have the degree of product change involved, meaning how much better is that product. And there are 4 different buckets. The first one is the easy sales. So think about your own product, right? These are the type of products that you could argue are a little bit better or not, you don't know, but you don't really have to learn a lot of stuff to use them, right? So think about a detergent, right? Detergents have been getting better and better for the last, 100 years. You keep using them in a similar way, yet they have new chemicals and apparently they do a better job, but do they? I don't know. So still, that's an easy sell, right? Because you still use it the same way. Then you have the sure failures. Products that have a not so clear benefit, like, they're better maybe, but they require a lot of relearning. And the example here is the T-Board keyboard. This keyboard was created in 1936, and it's interesting because what it does is that it groups all the keys on a keyboard that you use the most. So arguably, you can be faster, right? The QWERTY keyboard that we use actually does the opposite. I mean, the keys that you use the most are really spaced out because it comes from typewriters back in the days. So you need that safe travel space between the keys to make sure you wouldn't get jammed, right? So is it better? Could you be faster typing? Yeah, maybe. But the amount of relearning you have to do is so crazy that it falls under this category. The next one is smash hits. Things that you still use the same way, yet they keep getting better and better. I mean, the search field of Google is a really good example. And finally, the long haul. Products that require a lot of relearning, yet they're so much better that inevitably they're going to be successful on the long way, right? And the cell phone is a really good example because we used to carry these things, we used to carry a chemical battery, like 10 pounds of chemical stuff with us, and now we don't, right? Now we have it in our pockets. So really the key takeaways for evolving our product is as much as you can reduce behavioral changes, find users where they are. I mean, bringing new features in a way that feels disruptive. Even the definition of disruption is not a good definition. It's not a good thing for people that are using your product and rely on your product, every single day. To do things, not because they like using your product, they like getting things done. Second one, find believers. Really test, run with them. Test your assumptions. You never know what you're going to come up with, right? You never know what, as you evolve your roadmap and think about the features you're supporting, not supporting, you never know what you're going to find when you actually ask people that have either a lot of knowledge or not enough knowledge, and that's okay as well. And finally, think in the long term. I mean, all this, I like the idea of the cell phone as an example because it is a long haul, yet it's inevitably something that became successful already because again, it was so strong the value proposition that it had in comparison with the previous version of it. All right, so that was evolution, and I want to wrap it up with ownership. This is all about handling the perception of control and ownership, of course, of the product.
Okay, Google, what's my day like?
It is 11:38 a.m. The weather in Newport Beach currently is 63 degrees and sunny, with a high of 71 degrees. By the way, Disney's live-action Beauty and the Beast opens today. In this version of the story, Belle is the inventor instead of Maurice. That rings truer if you ask me. For some more movie fun, ask me to tell you something about Belle. Have a good one. Here's the latest news.
New from race base, the hottest girls in the nastiest situation.
So all this comes to say, when it comes to ownership, like really, advertising, for better or worse, is the fuel of the internet. And there's no way around it. You guys have a Google Home? Yes, no? Do you remember when that happened with the Beauty and the Beast? It was crazy. It's like, I use this device every single day to learn about the world, and now you sell me stuff? Maybe I love the Beauty and the Beast, and maybe don't, but that's irrelevant. I paid for this service already. So really, I know this is not a mind-blowing fact. It shouldn't be at this point. And there's really no way around it. No way around it, from a pure design perspective, unless we go, we scale and we start talking about business, business models and all that. However, there are a few things that I would like to share in that regard that I feel like at least we need to consider when, tackling this problem. And that is all, how can we really balance the business needs and the user needs without compromising comfort? So the most important thing that we should consider is really do not break the flow. When you get your users to be in that flow state, they came to your app, they're performing the actions that they need to do. Try not to get into or between intention and action. Again, remember, they didn't come to your app to watch ads. Nobody came for that reason. So try not to block them that much. Steven Sinofsky, which is product design guru at this point. He worked at Microsoft a long time ago. He came up with the idea of OneNote that became a product part of Office. He wrote this article that I really like called Frictionless Design Choices. He defines frictionless design as like the ability of reducing the energy required by an experience, right? And that applies to products that get way too many features and suddenly there's more friction, but also to like ads, right? Having ads on certain ads and how we treat those ads really creates friction and really kind of like enlarge that distance between the intention, why you came to the app, and the action, getting that thing done. So there's a little bit of wiggle room in the perception of ads overall, and that's kind of what I would like to talk about. The first thing that we should consider is context, and the next one is value. When it comes to context, advertising is very received when it suggests a contextual improvement. So Satya, Microsoft CEO, he was asked in one internal Q&A last year, what did he think about having ads in Microsoft, in Windows, right? And he said something that I thought was really interesting. He said that context is really what dictates if what you're looking at is annoying, is an ad, is a blocker, or if it is something that actually suggests an improvement of your experience. And his point was that we know so much about our users, we know so much about how they use our products that we can actually do a lot of things with that knowledge if we're able to control the content. The second one is value. Advertising will be perceived as solely the value offered exceeds the hurdle to view. So I want to ask you, because I don't have much time, but I want to ask you a question. It's a little bit odd, but bear with me for a second. Please raise your hand if you will use toilet paper with advertising if you could get it for free. What? All right, there's always one person. I love it because there's one person and then everybody's like, okay, it's okay to do it now. He will do it. Yeah, so, good, I guess, respect for you guys, but, not many people think that way, right? I ran this poll last year and, again, not many people responded, only 150, but I was amazed to see that, right? Like, people will still wipe their butt with advertising if they could get it for free. Why not? So that comes to say that, really that value is, it trumps kind of like the hurdle introduced by ads wiping the butt. So the perception of ownership is key to our user relationship, and really it needs to be balanced between the user needs, because you need them, and your business needs as well. It's a tricky situation, but if we can control content, or if we're able to control the value that we're proposing, or we're surfacing for our customers, we'll be in a better place. So finally, final thoughts. We talked about repetition, we talked about evolution, we talked about ownership, and we did this because, again, we're home builders. We're building these spaces where we want our users to feel at home. We want them to feel they can grow with us, they can feel at ease, they own this space. And while doing this, we have great power, right? We're impacting their lives. Just by the measure of time that we're taking out of their lives every day. So it is important, just as a final takeaway, that while we do this, we put out their wellness up front, and we actually always think about what's better for them as humans, and try to define a better experience for them every day. So truly is on us to do this work, and that's a wrap. Thank you so much.